There we go. Now I'll share it. Okay. So it's a relatively simple, well, it's deceptively simple. So you know, if you look carefully, you can see that there are houses here in the kind of mid ground here. So a friend of mine took this shot, and I don't remember what lens he was using, but anyway, they're pretty far. Well, they're not that far away. They just feel far away because you know how the lens does. But it's, you know, it's kind of fairly simple shapes, and I sent you guys kind of an uncorrected one, and I've been kind of playing with lightening this up just a skosh so you can see a little bit more of the fact that there's a couple of, you know, when I originally looked at it, it was just in my head, it was just one kind of simple mountain shape, and I think there's a couple. There's this kind of front section of mountains, there's these little ones in the back, and then there's this actual kind of hill right here that kind of goes up into another bit that's off of the out of the frame. But I really liked how this light was coming in underneath the clouds. I have this thing about that. I just really like how that works. And I'm gonna check. Becky's still having some trouble logging in, so I'm gonna make sure she's doing okay. But anyway, so this was kind of my thought. You know, it doesn't seem like there's a lot to this, but you can actually make this kind of an interesting scene just from the fact that there's this light. And even if it were me, I would end up adding something here in the foreground, kind of like we've done in the past. I don't know if we've done that in, trying to think. Let's see, that the door was the first painting we've worked on this semester, right? Or this class, right? Okay. So kind of like some of us have done in the, if you haven't taken my class before, then well, actually, I think everybody's taken my class at least once before. So, you know, sometimes I like to add like some fence posts or something in the fork. Here we go. She made it. Sometimes I like to add fence posts or something to kind of be in the foreground to kind of help direct the eye. So if somebody's coming in here, you know, because they're following this light pattern coming in, I might add, you know, some fence posts here. I might take this tree and move it somewhere else, and then add some fence posts into the foreground to help direct people back around this. And then I'll do something up here in the sky to kind of continue that circular motion and kind of zoom in. And I like this light, but it leads us over to what's kind of interesting are these mountains here. So that's what I was thinking when I did this. And I'm sorry I didn't have a chance to do a sketch for this one. I usually like to do that, but it might be fun to try to do one without a sketch. I mean, let's see. Can I make that bigger? Probably have to, there we go. Well, that's, yeah, I guess that's about as big. I was trying to make it just slightly bigger on my screen for you guys. But anyway, so that's kind of what I'm thinking. And if you want, you know, just kind of similarly, you don't necessarily have to save out those, you know, if you sketch in some fence posts or something here, they kind of, you know, follow along this little ditch line or whatever, and then come up and there's this kind of dark shape here that maybe catches a little bit of light. You don't necessarily have to tape those off. I do that a lot of times, but sometimes I'll just add them in later. So I thought what I'd do is not take them off this time. We did this once the class prior, and I liked how it worked. So I thought we could try it this way again as well, just kind of adding them in. I'll draw mine in so you can kind of see what I've done, but then we'll add them, you know, we'll draw them in ahead of time, but we won't like mask them off or anything. So anyway, this is the image, and I thought maybe we could, I need to get my camera back up and going. There we go. And that'll be good enough for now. I'll figure it out later if it's aimed right once we're done drawing this.
Are you filming?
Am I recording this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Yes. I'm relatively sure that I did. Let me stop the share really quickly. And yes, yeah, I did that. That's why I stopped the sharing before, you know, the screen share before, and then I started having self-doubt. So I'm glad you checked, just to be on the safe side. Okay, so there's that, and we'll go ahead and draw this, and then let's see. I need a pencil sharpener. Yeah. All right. So the nice thing about this is you don't really have to put in a lot of detail. You kind of just need some of these shapes to kind of inform where you're going to put the paint. So don't worry about putting a lot of detail in there. I'm going to kind of start with where my height is.
Sorry, I'm kind of busy.
Okay, I did those. Oh, no. There are days when I just can't get something, my pencil to work right. Okay. So I decided to completely get rid of this tree. I didn't feel like it was helping me out any. Um, let's see. Has everybody? There we go. Get that get this aimed right first. Has everybody had an opportunity to kind of get that sketched out on their paper?
I have.
Okay, I'm gonna.
I really like the tree, dang it.
Well, you can leave the tree in there. I just didn't feel like it was doing any. Well, okay, let me rethink this really quick. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the share real quick and show you what I have so far, and then we'll kind of. There we go. So that is my sketch so far. And I didn't feel like, and I don't know if you can kind of tell, but I have this kind of little bit of these little shrubby trees kind of coming in right here. And then I have another little bit coming in there. This is all going to be fairly light coming in through there. I do like the tree. I just didn't think it was doing anything for what I was trying to do. I'm not saying you shouldn't do the tree. It'll be similar enough to these little, kind of scrubby things and these trees in the background that you could do one. And maybe instead of this fence post motif, it's like a larger tree that kind of acts as the thing that brings you up there. So there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to do that instead, make sure it, make it your own, really, is the key. I think if I hadn't made these fence posts as large as I did, as close to me as I did, I probably would have done. I think had I not decided to use them, I would have done, a fairly sizable tree here. I would have taken that little tree and enlarged it into a bigger space here to act as that thing that brought me up into. this area here. Because really this is all about, you can see, I mean, the light's going to be coming in this way, and these things are all pointing us over here into this thing that's going to pull us up. And this is kind of what I want, you know, where I want that interest to be is kind of right in here. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Yeah, so I think if you want to do a tree right here instead, I would just do a larger, you know, kind of, I would enlarge it a little bit, bring it forward in space a little bit more. But you could definitely do, you know, a nice large tree shape. It could even be that there's multiple, you know, a couple, you know, it's a grouping of trees instead of just one. But that would be a fun, I think, kind of interesting way to do that. Okay. So no matter what, we're kind of all going to kind of start the same way. And I'm going to start with just a nice wash over this foreground area. We're going to start with kind of lighter, or, you know, kind of yellows and oranges, but we'll throw in some green. It's very similar to what we've done in the past with foregrounds. We're going to start with the lighter colors, probably. Let's see if I can get this name right. Ooh. So that's still, nope. There we go. Probably, back, let me just take it out of this real quick. You know, we'll be using some permanent green #1 or whatever light green you have, that kind of nice grass green. But we'll be using, you know, like lemon yellow and permanent green. I'm sorry, permanent yellow deep. Probably some permanent yellow orange. These are like cadmium orange and cadmium yellow orange, I think, is what the you know, kind of cadmium color, similar, you know, I guess similar colors to these two that I use. Or you could use Indian yellow or that azo yellow that I think I used last time. If you have something like that, that's a nice light yellow to use. So we're going to be playing around with kind of some greens and yellows and oranges, and probably you could use a little permanent red or even opera or Scarlet Lake, or, you know, any of those kinds of reds. And we could almost decide that we want to put a little peacock blue or something in there as well, or even Andrews turquoise. But it's all going to be a fairly light wash. So let me put this back up there. And I'm going to start with, let me kind of clean this spot off here. I'm going to start with a little lemon yellow first. And I'm not going to really worry about anything in the foreground, any of these shapes that are there. We'll build these things up later and kind of deal with them. So I'm just going to kind of bring in this kind of nice yellow. You can see it's a, you know, just a little, you know, I'm not concerned with shapes yet or anything like that. And then I'm just going to do a little of this permanent yellow deep. And then back up in here, there's a fair amount of light coming across. So there's like a little bit, the way I've done it, there's a little bit of, you know, light coming in further back, and there's kind of this slightly darker break going on there. So we'll just kind of bring that in. Let's do a little, I'll do a little orange over here. That looks pretty bright orange, but once I add a little more water, it'll really lighten back up. Now, if you do have a tree over here, I would not paint over the tree. I would save that tree to paint later. But this stuff, this kind of scrubby stuff and smaller tree shapes back in the background, I'm not overly worried about. Let's see. I'm going to use a little I think this is a little Scarlet Lake. I'll throw a little of that in. Maybe some opera. That's always kind of fun. We'll just kind of pop that in a few spaces. And then I do feel like I need a touch of green in this. The permanent yellow or the lemon yellow has kind of a slightly green tint to it, but not that much. Let's see. It's just, so we're just going to kind of, and this all this is just a real quick initial wash. Some of this will get darker shadows on top later. Let's see. I want a little more of that green. Come into here. And if I start, up here, I probably should kind of pay attention and kind of soften that a little bit up in here, just so I don't get too sharp a line. If it's coming up into the mountains, that's okay too. That won't hurt anything.
Really fuzzy.
Yeah. Oh, whoa.
Yeah, really fuzzy.
What happened there? That was weird. Is that focused now? There we go.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
better.
That was weird. I don't know what happened there. It just didn't want to focus. I think my hand got really close and it went out of focus and didn't feel like focusing back. Sorry about that. You guys are like, I can't tell what you're doing. So, and again, this is just, our initial wash. I'm going to put a little bit more of that permanent yellow deep kind of through there, because that's where I'm going to have a bit more of that light kind of shining through. And even though in the photo it's a kind of a pale yellow, I want to exaggerate that a little bit. So let's see. Let's go back to some of this green. Grab some of that. So there's our, and it's supposed to look, it'll look kind of weird and sloppy. So don't panic if it doesn't look great. Put some of that in there. I think I'm gonna pop just a bit more opera right in through there. And then I may try to force some blossoms just to see what happens. As this dries in a couple of spots, if I add some water and let that dry, excuse me, I got the hiccups. That'll form some nice texture with those blossoms. Yeah. We'll let that dry for a second here. Or I'll let it dry for a second here while you guys are. Really, I think I'm just going to add some more water to that. Get that to kind of run and do some interesting things. Pick up some of that excess, yeah. So yeah, I think I'm gonna dry this real quick. For a second, and then let's see. And I want to get it to dry just enough to where I can add a little water and it'll blossom a little better. So I don't want it completely dry, just dry enough. Maybe there's a little too dry. That's all right. That kind of run. Yeah, there we go. It's not quite dry, but it's close enough. So that's kind of our foreground. It's not, you know, it won't look like much yet because you know we're kind of doing these sort of big washes first, and then we'll as we go along we'll tighten it up. What I do think I want to do now is, you know, kind of looking at if I go back to this, you know, we have this kind of pinkish gray, you know, rock here. I don't know if those are granite. This is over by Taos. I don't remember what those are. Those granite over there. I don't remember. Anyway, you know, this pinkish kind of gray looking rock. Personally, I want to give it just a little bit more warmth. Not a lot, because I still want it to feel fairly cool over in here. You know, like this is maybe a summer rainstorm. But I do want to kind of warm that up just a bit. So I've kind of sketched in those generic shapes, not really great. In fact, I kind of forgot one. I have this sort of shape here, but I don't know. I mean, it's not real important to have it exact. Just kind of something similar. I forgot this other kind of, I don't know, shape right here. I don't know. I don't like how that looks. I'll come back down like so. You know, and maybe there's a few little bits over here as well. Again, it doesn't have to look exactly like what's there. Just kind of similar. Let me redraw that little bit right there. Yeah. It seems like there was a little bit over here. Some little shape kind of things over here as well. Again, these aren't super accurate. They don't need to be. A little thing down through here too. So And actually, there was some of that pink kind of over in here too. I'm just kind of making these shapes up. They're similar, but not quite the same. Okay, so I'm going to switch to like my number 10 round. You know, it's still a fairly sizable brush, but it's a little easier to control. I'm not overly concerned with staying perfectly within these shapes that I've drawn on here, because I'm going to come back with some much darker colors on top for those. You know, I really want those mountains to be a nice dark blue, blue green kind of color. So I'm going to start with, I have this, I'll show you. It's quinacridone, permanent magenta right here that I've, you can see that's kind of what permanent magenta looks like on its own. But then I've mixed in just a bit of that blue green that I created last week. And it darkens it just a bit. You know, it takes away that bright pink just a bit. So it's a little bit grayer of a pink, you know, violet. And this looks like it's going to be too much, but it's not. And then I'm going to add, I'll probably put in a little opera. You can't see that because I'm not. I'll probably put in a little opera, which I have here. But I think I'm going to use, just try a little bit of Pyro Orange. That'll, and if you don't have Pyro Orange, the reason I'm using it is because it kind of turns to a salmon peach when you water it down quite a bit. But if you don't have that, you could use just your regular orange, just a hint of it in here next to that, you know, next to this kind of gray purpley color that I've made. If you have something similar, so yeah, there we go. That's a little grayer. So that's what I kind of want. And so I've got a little. Let's see, is this Scarlet Lake? That's not what I want to use. I don't want to actually use Scarlet Lake. I think I want to use like a permanent rose, or let's see, yeah, something a little slightly pinker in with that. So I'll show you what I'm doing here. And these aren't going to be huge, you know, huge spaces. And again, I don't have to, let's see, I'm just going to kind of put this, this is that gray purpley color that's coming in there. And then maybe we'll come in with just a bit of that opera and some of the Pyro Orange, which will just kind of warm it up just a little bit in some spots. Again, here I'll show you, this is the permanent yellow orange. I can just add a little of that in there and it'll warm it just a skosh as well. So 2 options. That was the Pyro Orange, and this is the permanent yellow orange or cadmium orange. Right in there. So I'm just kind of coming in with a little of that, maybe just a skosh of that permanent rose. If you don't have permanent rose, don't worry about that. Just, you know, use you know, just use something like opera or something like that. And you can see, I mean, there's not a lot of that in there, just enough to give it just a hint of a bright, you know, warmth. That's really all I want. Here, I'll use a little more of the orange, kind of down in here. Give it a little warmth. Maybe I'll come in with a little over here of the orange first, in this little spot. And then I'll come in with this kind of purpley gray over here. Just kind of like so, and maybe just a skosh of opera. And you know, not a lot. That's not a huge space that I'm filling. Let's see. I'm going to do a little bit. I have this kind of shape over here. I don't really know. I'll just kind of do some of that and then bring in some pyro orange into there. Again, not overly concerned with staying in the shape or copying that shape exactly. You want a little orange up in there and a little of that purple gray kind of in that little shape that's up there. Let's see. I've got kind of a bit of that going on over in here, so let's do some of that. Come in with a little. I'll just use the orange, you know, the permanent yellow orange over in here, maybe just to warm it up. And I might throw in a little pyro orange just because. I mean that starts off really bright and vibrant, and I want to dull it down, so I'm just going to add quite a bit of water to it and let this purple, you know, this gray purple that I mixed, kind of allow that to dull down just a bit. It's still got a little bit of that warmth, but not as much as, say, what's going on down here. Need a drink of water. Okay, so let's see here. Little, maybe just a Scotia Opera in there. The nice thing is opera can kind of be a warm color and a cool color. So it works really well in shadows, even though it's a very light color. It works really well kind of pulling that, you know, adding a little lightness to a shadow and almost warming it up, but not quite. And it works really well in light areas, cooling, you know, slightly cooling down a light area. So that's why I like opera so much. It's such a versatile color. And it gives you a pop of slightly brighter color. Let's see. I'm going to come in with a little bit of this pyro orange here along in there. So those two are kind of separated. And if I accidentally get them, you know, if they accidentally bleed together a little bit more, I added a little orange there. If they accidentally bleed together a little bit, that's okay too. Because that's all going to be a fairly dark blue-green or blue, or even maybe a purple in there, in that space between these two shapes. So if I get a little bit where, but as I'm looking at this, you know, it's kind of light right in this area here. It starts to get a little darker the further out from there that you get. And where I feel like maybe I've got a little bit too much, I can come in with just a thirsty brush and lift that back up. And then I think over in here, we'll just stick to kind of the cooler colors, maybe a little bit of opera or a little bit of permanent rose back in here. But then mostly this kind of cooler purple mix that we made. And if these, you know, again, I can't stress enough that these don't look exactly like the photo. They're not gonna look exactly like the photo, and they shouldn't, in my opinion. Just a little bit of, felt like it needed something right in there. So there we go. That's you know, maybe we want a little bit more rock or whatever over in here. Just to kind of and now I'm just adding a few spots where I feel like maybe there would be a little more of that rock showing through. May not necessarily be there on the photo, but it feels like maybe it needs it to kind of break that up. You know, maybe that's sharp. Those are sharp cliff faces versus where all this dark blue green is going to be, is where trees are growing. So there's enough soil on that for the trees to take root. Whereas this is all, you know, fairly sheer cliff face kind of stuff that we're seeing. Right now, it just looks like a bunch of weird pink blobs, but yeah, that kind of brings that in. Excuse me. Sorry. Didn't mean to yawn. Also, let's see. Before I go too much further, I want to kind of bring in, there's this kind of hill in the foreground. There's this kind of mid-ground hill. And technically, this hill is really in the mid-ground as well, because this is really the foreground here. But there's this kind of light green, yellow, mid-ground hill that I really should have put some of this initial wash on. So I'm just going to bring that up. And what that is a little bit of lemon yellow. It's actually probably got a little bit of, well, and it's got a little permanent green in it. And then it probably picked up some of that permanent yellow deep as well for this little bit here. But this is just that, again, part of that initial wash that I kind of forgot. But that will be kind of back in there. It's kind of that hill coming up back there in the mid ground area. Yeah. And again, if you've decided to put your tree over here, I would hold off and paint that tree after we do a little bit more on this foreground. So I would leave that white. Or if you want, you can go in and, now that this stuff is, excuse me, wow. Now that this stuff is kind of mostly dry, you could go in and work that tree, you know, with the lighter stuff on this side. I know on the, if we go back to the photo really quick, I'll show you. I know that, you know, it looks fairly dark, but if we kind of zoom in on it, you can see that there's a fair amount of like light on it. And I would play up some of that and add a little bit more light, a little bit more midtones before you get into these really darks, especially if you make it quite a bit bigger than it appears here in the photo. So that's what I would do. Now would be a good time to maybe put in that initial wash of that tree if you're going in that direction. And it'll be similar to some of the stuff that I do next, so you can kind of see where I'm coming from. So what I want to do is kind of work a little bit on this mid-ground area now. That section is dried enough that I can, gotta stretch my leg out. Had my leg kind of folded back underneath my chair. The knee started cramping up. Okay, So I want to, this is all fairly light right now, and I want to save some of that, but I don't have to save all of it. But I am going to come back in with just a hint of apparently a very dirty lemon yellow, and add just a bit. In fact, I think I'm going to switch over to the permanent yellow deep instead of the lemon yellow, and add just a bit of that in a few spots. This already kind of has it, but I'm going to start back here and kind of work my way forward. So I added just a bit of that, but it doesn't need a lot. Now I'm going to move into this like permanent green number 1. And this is basically just the second wash that we're going to do on this, or second glaze that we're going to do on this sort of these trees here. So not terribly worried about them being perfect yet. Maybe these kind of come over.
Can't see your painting.
Oh, man, I forgot to stop sharing. So sorry. You guys are thinking, well, what the heck is he doing? See here, I added just a little hint of orange right up in there. But mostly, I've been using this permanent green number 1. So sorry about that, guys. Thank you for calling that out. I'll kind of zoom in on what I've got going here. There's not, again, this isn't a lot of detail. I'm just kind of putting, kind of dabbing this paint on with the kind of tip, and I'm varying the pressure. So I'm either using the tip of my brush or kind of pressing down a little bit to get a thicker stroke. But that's really all this is just a little bit of kind of these like little tick mark kind of things that I've done before. I'm going to pull a little of that orange in there. It's kind of a dirty orange mix. And then back to this green. And I don't want a lot, because this is summer, so I don't want a lot of that yellow. Really, that yellow is coming from the sunlight coming in underneath the clouds. All right, let's see. Let's go back in a little more. I might actually lighten some of this permanent green number 1 up with a little lemon yellow. So I'll grab a little lemon yellow and mix that in to give myself a lighter grass green for some of this, because and I can already tell that I've kind of, the way I've drawn this and scaled this, these are a little bit, this is a little bit closer. I've kind of moved us forward in space. I can see that I kind of lost some of my yellow right there that I don't want to lose yet. Right in there, I want that to stay fairly bright. So I have to be a little careful where I've drawn these little trees. And we'll add much darker paint to this later, so don't fret if it's a little, if it seems a little light. We're just kind of putting in this initial bit of tree shape. Just kind of going back and forth between the permanent yellow lemon and the permanent green, and kind of mixing the two a little bit on my palette. I'll show you what I've done there. So I've got permanent green number 1 that I keep pulling out of here, and then lemon yellow that I keep pulling out of here. And if I clean my brush off, I can grab some pretty clean lemon yellow right there. But then what I'll do is, I'll show you, I grab my green here, I'll put a little more green down. And there's a lot of water in that. I'll clean my brush, I'll grab a little lemon yellow, And I'll come over here and kind of mix the two right here. So you can see I get that little bit lighter kind of grass green between the two. So I can keep my lemon yellow and my green fairly pure by mixing, you know, kind of pulling this over here and being a little careful. But that gives me that slightly lighter kind of grass green or pea green, whatever you want to call it, that I'm using here. Let's see. And then I'm going to make these trees kind of a little bit bigger. So I'm pulling them up. And it looks like I'm just painting the same color right on top. And that's okay, because I can come in later here in a minute with some darker color as this stuff dries. I don't want it to run too much. I'm just so I'm just kind of putting this color down there to inform me where I've decided, okay, well, this is going to kind of rise up and reinforce this shape here. So let's come in with green. Oops, that might be too much. And that got pretty bright right there, but later we'll dull that down just a bit so it's not quite as bright near the edge of the paper. I'm going to do something similar here on these. Now this shrubby stuff here is all going to mostly be dark. I'll have a little bit of light in there. So I'm not worried about this. I'll probably, you know, this is one of those things that I'll paint later when we do this kind of, you know, these fence posts or whatever. And oh, I also have this kind of little, there's a little kind of bit of full, you know, tree shrubby stuff kind of coming down here to split this kind of area here and this area here that have caught light. And then I've got this kind of, instead of the houses and things that you can barely see in there, you know, there's this kind of dark foliage in that photo. I kind of chose to put that here, and I just didn't even worry about those houses because they're so little you can almost hardly see them. So it didn't feel worth the time to put them in there. If I were closer to one and this stuff was further in the background kind of thing, or more background, then I would, you know, I would think about putting these houses in. Not particularly, you know, we're not painting those houses. If I was painting a portrait of those houses, that would be different. Or a part of the houses with the mountains in the background or something. But in this case, we're just, I like this landscape, this, you know, image. I'm just going to kind of pull that in. Again, this is just kind of that green. Looks a little weird on screen on camera, but this is just that permanent green number 1. And I think this is, you know, that's dry. So I'm going to come in with a little permanent green number 2. And just start adding a few midtones in here. And again, I don't need a lot of detail. I just need, you know, I'm not, these are trees that are way off in the distance. So we just need to suggest that that's what they are. And again, and this is just a midtone. This is not our darkest dark that we're going to get in here. We're just kind of adding a little mid-tone, you know, a mid-dark, medium dark, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So some of this. There, that little medium. Oops, that was a little too much. So, not a lot of detail going into this, but you know, it's already starting to add some depth to this just by adding that little bit. Come in here with a little bit more down in here. The only reason I haven't done this yet is because I was afraid of wiping my hand through it. And I'm just kind of playing with different little marks. You know, I'm kind of if I blew them up, I don't. Let's see. A little scrap piece of paper here. Where did that go? I had a little scrap piece of paper. I'll show you kind of bigger what these shapes are. Really, I'm just taking my brush and I'm just kind of doing little scribbly squiggles. I'm pressing down and getting thicker lines like that. And then I'm raising the brush up a little bit to get these thinner lines. And so that kind of, you know, and where I feel like maybe I need a little more water, I go back in with the side of the brush a little bit. And that's all I'm doing. I'm just kind of, you know, making these little squiggly shapes that will eventually look kind of like trees. So that's really all that this is, kind of enlarged. And enlarged, it looks a little weird, but you know, way back in the background, it doesn't look too bad. And it kind of works. Let's see, I think I got a little more come into there and then stop it. And then same with here. We'll just kind of that.
Whoa.
But that's kind of the great thing about watercolor specifically, but really painting in an impressionistic style, you don't have to have all that much detail. You know, if it looks like it, seems like it, then it must be it. So these kind of seem like trees back in the background. So that must be what they are. It kind of is, you know, it works out that way. Is it just feels like that's what those are. So I just added just a wee bit of lemon yellow. I don't know why. I'm going to come back in with, and I may make these just slightly bigger. This is permanent green number 1. I've got here kind of reproducing what I did there a little bit, just because it's very similar. These are still fairly far off in the distance. And I'm not super concerned about a straight line at the bottom because I want them to look kind of scrubby. You know, like grass has grown tall or, you know, any of that kind of stuff. So there. I am going to add, I do like actually how that kind of blended in with that green. So I'm going to add a little bit more. I drew these little spots of tree a little smaller, but I think I'm going to make them just a wee bit bigger. So I put in a little lemon yellow, and my brush wasn't completely clean when I picked it up. So it had a little bit of permanent green number 1 in there, which is fine. And then these are just little tick marks that I'm placing. along there. And then we'll come back in with a little of that lemon yellow permanent green #1 mix. So it's just slightly lighter. And then we'll pick up some permanent green #1 and plop that in there. And we're just kind of building these shapes up. Let's see. Like that. And then maybe just a hint of a little bit right in there.
Crap.
You all right there?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, my phone's ringing and I went, oh, crap.
Oh.
I'll mute myself.
Oh, no, that's okay. I just was thinking maybe you had a question. Let's see. My dad's trying to call me. I don't know how many times I tell him that I have class at 6, but and can't answer my phone. Okay. I may even come in. I think I'm going to pull this is a little. I just picked up a little peacock blue just to kind of try something. That may be what I end up using for some of the darker, well, even some of the mid-tone, just to give it a little variation. Because peacock blue has a wee bit of a, kind of a, well, actually it's not pure peacock blue that I picked up. I had a little peacock blue mixed with Hooker's green, plus a little more peacock blue that kind of came in there. And I just wanted to try that out. I could even come in with some of that violet color that we used, that violet gray up there that we used, and add a little bit of that. As a dark, I'll show you kind of what I'm talking about here. Just by adding that little bit of violet, it makes it just a wee bit more vibrant. Because the green, violet is complementary of green, so. Lower on this so it's not quite, I'm not causing a shadow. Yeah. And I can just add little dots of, all this is little dots of a darker color that add a little bit of depth to these shapes. Because there's not a lot of water and not a lot of paint that I'm using on this, this is drying fairly quickly, and that's okay. I'm going to come in with a little permanent green #2 over here. Just to add a little more, start a little more volume on that. If I need to, I can always make these a little bit bigger and pull them forward in space just a bit. just by doing, adding a little more to the bottom. I think I am going to pull in a little bit of that violet again. So that's this violet over here that I've kind of mixed up, and I have a little bit of the darker blue violet right here, and then if I pull in a little bit more of that green violet here, you get kind of a nice dark violet. And I can add that to a few things. Basically, really, I'm just mimicking, just dark areas and trunks of the trees, just little things to add a little more depth to that. Let's come in this area. You could also use a little Hooker's green and mix that with a little blue, and that would give you kind of like what I've got right here. So I just put a little Hooker's green there, and I can grab a little royal blue, and now I have this really nice dark blue green, although that's very close to what I'm going to be using in the mountains in some areas. So so I don't want to use too much of that yet. But I do like how this violet is looking in it. And it, believe it or not, it actually makes it pop a little bit more. And I'm just, I'm going to use just a wee hint of that blue just to mix it up. That blue green that I mixed on camera, it almost looks the same. I'm trying to find a not too shadowy way of showing this to you without blocking my view. I was kind of painting, looking through the screen of my phone and watching what I was doing. That was a little weird. This is just, I've moved back into that purple. Maybe I'll grab just a little bit of plain Hooker's green. And as we get over here, I'll use a little of that over in this area. And then maybe some of that blue green, that royal blue Hooker's green mix that I made. That could work too. And what will happen is we'll add a wee bit of dark, even though this is going to be quite a bit lighter, than some of the surrounding area. I'm going to add a little bit of a darker shade to that so that the tops of the trees are a little more visible. Right now, it looks like just dark stuff. You can't really see where I've, left that lighter green. I just want to soften some of that back up. So let's come back over here. I don't know why I started in the middle and moved. I should have started over here. Let's see here. That's a little of that. Hooker's green blue mix. And maybe we'll pull in a little violet. I know they look just kind of very similar on camera, but let's go in a little just plain Hooker's green maybe. And here. Green down in here. And I mean, literally, you can see those are just little tiny tick marks that I've made with the brush. I mean, it's not, I'm not painting a lot of detail. We're still working really pretty loose. Let me get enough paint and water on my brush. Add a little violet in there. A little of that here as well. Not too much. Just enough to kind of give us that impression that we've got some dark areas where there are trunks or whatever. Yeah. So that's starting to add a little bit of depth in there. We can come back in and add some more, you know, of this kind of, you know, golden, that permanent yellow deep, and get a nice golden color in there. Let's see. I'm going to kind of do these kind of these hills right here, which are kind of, so I'm going to move back up to my number 10 round. I was using my number 6 for that, by the way. Maybe I want just a bit more. I didn't realize I had a little bit of something going on right here, so I'm just going to add a little darker stuff to that right there. Okay, so yeah, I want to kind of come in here and add those darker kind of shapes. They're kind of a. I'm going to start off with a little permanent green number 2 first on these edges, because I want there to be a little bit of a kind of a green. What do I say? A little bit of a lighter green kind of on the face of these. So I've got this kind of hill coming in there. So I've got this kind of hill coming in there. And then I've got, and I may want to be careful right here where I'm doing that, because I don't want that to, you know, I don't necessarily want this darker green that I'm going to come in with to run into that too much. So now I've got that blue, Hooker's green and royal blue mix. There we go, I'll get it right. And I'm just going to come in down here. I'm going to kind of paint around these tree shapes. And then I want to keep this fairly dark. Now, this may require another layer or glaze on top. I'm going to switch real quick to my number 6 brush when I get down into here, just so I can kind of make this a nice little transition right there. There we go. Okay. I probably should have done one of these and then done the other, because I can already tell that's drying really fast. I'm going to get that wet again. Just wetting that back. All that is just I'm adding water to that permanent green number 2. I'll reload my brush up. You know, if it bleeds a little bit, it's not a big deal. Just kind of bring that in there. And then this comes down like that. And this is gonna, they kind of blend together down in here. So that is kind of how I want that actually to look. So that's not too shabby. When I get over here though, I need to be a little careful. I want that to be a little softer. We'll just add a little more water to this. And that's all I did was just take kind of a clean brush and add a little water to it. Let's come back in here now with that dark Hooker's Green Royal Blue mix.
GPS signal lost.
You guys lost my signal?
Sorry, I didn't realize I had my mic.
Oh, no worries.
My mic.
Okay, no worries. Okay. So there we go. That's that little bit. And I may have to come back in with an even darker bit later after this dries. And get that a little bit darker. I do want, before that dries too much, I like what's going on there, but I want to add just a bit more darkness here so I don't lose that softness that I've got going on right in there.
Can you slow down just a little bit, please?
Yeah, so I'll just finish up this little bit right here and then I'll kind of take a break and let you guys catch up. How's that?
That would be great.
Okay. So yeah, so all this is, and real quickly, I just, before this dries too much, I want to add just a wee bit more royal blue to this. And then you guys can, that's really all I'm doing right here. And then I'll let you guys catch up. Yeah. Okay. So I will stop and let you guys catch up. So I do want to kind of lift just a hair right there. Now I think I lifted too much. I'll refill my water bottle. I had this 20-year-old avocado tree down here, and when I started going down to get, well, actually, it was when I caught COVID over Christmas. That's when it died. I was gone for 3 weeks and couldn't water my plants that are down here, and my avocado tree died. And I had 3 or 4 avocado seeds. Well, I was eating avocados after that. And I had 3 or 4 avocado seeds, and I put them in the pot that the tree was in because it was still sitting down here. And I have 2 of them that sprouted. So I have 2 avocado trees coming back up in the same pot. It's kind of funny. Too bad this isn't like live, like a TiVo or DVR TV thing where you can rewind live TV and fast forward through stuff, right?
That would be perfect.
haven't perfected that technology yet.
Next semester.
Yeah. Well, you guys let me know when you're ready. But I'm in no hurry, so don't sweat about that.
Right now, I can hardly keep my internet going.
Oh man. Does it work for you to
My,
watch the recordings though?
Well, it keeps buffering, so it gives me plenty of time to catch up.
Oh yeah.
Buffering, buffering, buffering.
That's the one downside to this plan. Well, there's a couple of downsides to this virtual learning, but one of them is definitely internet speeds everywhere.
It would be nice to
Yeah.
have faster internet out here in the country. But at least I have internet. It used to be dial-up.
Right. Yeah.
At least I don't have dial-up anymore.
Yeah. I remember dial up. Dial up was terrible.
Well, my daughter comes to visit us out here and she can't handle it.
Can't deal with it, huh?
Nope, she has to go home and take care of it at home.
Well, I guess there's something to be said for being disconnected from or unplugged.
Well, I do get her to order all my stuff for me. You take care of it, sweetheart. Well, shoot, that didn't turn out the way I wanted it, but that's okay. It just looks like one big blob.
Well, sometimes we have those days. I have days when things don't work out quite right, so.
Okay, I love hearing you guys talk because that's how I feel too.
Okay, Michael, this is what I have so far.
Oh yeah, that's looking good. I think that's better than just a big old blob. Yeah, I think you're doing all right. Way better than you think you are.
Okay.
Yeah. Is everybody caught up, or do we need to wait a little bit more?
I'm okay.
I'm caught up, Michael.
Oh, okay. Well, all righty then. Yeah, no, Becky, I think yours is looking pretty good. Don't stress too much about. And again, we've got to tell ourselves we're just practicing. That's all this is. If you get something that you like enough to frame and put up on your wall, that's great. But usually, I don't. Sometimes I get things out of this class that I like, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I think I could have done something slightly different with that, or something like that. So it just, and when I'm taking classes, I rarely get things that I'm super happy with because I'm trying to incorporate things that I've learned into kind of the way I like to work. So I'm trying to take those techniques and apply them to the way I like to work. So So don't feel too bad. I am going to, this is dried, so I'm going to kind of come in here and just soften, or not soften, lift just a wee bit more of this little spot out, so I get a little bit lighter bit going back down in there a little more. It doesn't need to be quite that light, but I want to kind of start lighter than it'll end up, so it doesn't get too dark. And this bled over into here a little bit more than I want, so I'm just gonna lift just a bit right there as well. And all I'm doing is, this is 100% dry, and I'm just adding a little water to it, and then just kind of lifting, just lifting out a lot. I'm not really scrubbing it. If I wanted it to go down to much lighter, I would sit there and scrub it with my washcloth here, but I don't want to do that. But yeah, so I just wanted that little bit of a highlight on there. And really, there's probably one right in here too. There'd be a little bit of a highlight right in here as well. But again, not that important. I'll see what happens when I put it in there. I may not like it. So just basically a little bit of where a little bit of that light is catching the edge of, there's maybe a little tiny bit of a valley right there. Not really a valley, but yeah. Okay, so I do want to darken this up a little bit, but I don't want it to be like this blue-green. So I'm going to come in with just a little hooker's green, and which should be dark enough. And a fair amount of water, so I don't want too much in there. And I'm going to kind of, and if I get a little too much, I can always add more water. But I'm going to kind of sculpt around the tops of these trees here. So see, that looks too dark. So I'll kind of clean my brush out and then come back in. And it may be that that's now too light, so I can add just a bit more paint to that. But there we go. And then up in here, I can kind of do this kind of a number. Just kind of soften that as we go. I just want to knock that back a little bit. I don't want it as bright as what's going on up here. Maybe as I get a little further away from this blue, I can now add a little bit of that in there. Not a lot. I don't want as much as I add on these two areas, because I still want that to be fairly light green, yellow green kind of. I want that to show through quite a bit more. Just kind of go around these guys here and sort of sculpt the top of those a little bit, and then so that should push that back a fair amount, but it's still, because it's lighter and a little brighter than this stuff, it's still going to read like it's in front, but it'll push it back from this area, because you can see this stuff in here, and that is a lot bright, a lot, it's got these nice lights in there. Yeah. And I'm not sure I care for what I did here. What I may come in, I don't really care for these shapes. I think I kind of want to make these just a little bit lower. So I'm just going to come in with that blue-green down in here, like so, and just kind of fill that in. a little bit more. And then what I can do is just kind of soften that, feather that out up into this. And if there's a little texture there now, that's okay. I don't mind that. It just looks like maybe there's some stuff going on there, but I just didn't. I think I left a little too much of that that foreground color, and I needed a little bit of a break in those trees right there. Not that it was necessarily like that in real life, but I kind of liked how I drew that little break right there. So I wanted to make sure that I saved that and got rid of that little bit of light, extra light that I put in there. But yeah, so not too bad. So let's see. I think I want to start with I want to do a little bit of these back. You know, I've got this kind of mountainy shape here, and I've got this other little mountainy shape there that are behind this one. But actually, I think I'm going to start with this foreground one, and this is going to be an even more blue green. Well, it's going to be very similar to this, starting over here. I'm going to use a little because there's going to be a little bit of like this kind of green glow where the trees are getting hit by some of that sunlight. So it's going to have kind of a yellowy green glow. And what I'm going to do is first, I'm going to, and this is going to sound a little odd, but I'm going to put in, let's see, I need to switch to a different brush. I'm going to use my number 8 round. Let's fiddle in there with the number 6, and that's going to be too small. I'm going to grab some of this permanent yellow deep, not a lot, just a little bit. I want a little bit of that kind of in here. On some of these lighter, kind of areas. And I can come back in later and add a little on top to add a bit of a hazy effect as well. But this is just kind of some light areas. And then I'm going to come in with a little hooker. Well, do I want to use a little? I think I'm going to use a little Hooker's green. Maybe pick up a little bit of green number 2. So it's not quite Hooker's green. It's a little bit brighter green. And sort of come back in now in there in a few spots. Just to get that to kind of bleed in. And then we'll move into a little less blue, more Hooker's green mix. So here we had more blue. And right now we're going to do a little higher in the Hooker's green versus the royal blue. So I want it slightly greener. And you can see what I've done here. It probably looks very similar on screen, but this has got more green in it than royal blue. And we'll come in here. And if that bleeds a little bit, that's okay. I can come back in and lift some of that back out. But then we'll kind of come in on the bottom. We're going to do that same kind of thing on the bottom where we kind of sculpt how we want these trees to look. So I'm going to start off with, this kind of green. Let's see, where did that go? That kind of came up. And maybe up in here we'll add a little bit more blue. So just kind of working my way around these kind of mid-ground, trees that I've got there. And it's okay if some of this, you know, like I've got a fair amount of that yellow that's been taken over by the green. That is okay. Oops. Didn't quite wash my brush out quite enough. There we go. Just wanted to add a little bit of water to that so it blend in a little bit more or bleed a little bit more. And even though this looks like it's fairly dark, it's not really that dark yet. Because there's a fair amount of water in this. So let's come in there. I think I'm going to switch to a little bit more. I'm going to switch actually to a little indigo. But if you don't have indigo, you could use just, you know, like Prussian blue. I think that's what I'm using. Indigo, right? Yes. Or Antwerp blue, something of that nature. In fact, I might even like that a little better than the indigo that I'm using at the moment. But I'm going to switch. I want a pretty dark blue kind of in here. And then I'm just going to kind of paint around these little sides. Now, what's going to happen later, because these are so bright, we're going to come in with a light wash over the top of them later. If that makes, hopefully that makes sense. But right now, it's just going to be, it's just going to look like we're painting a fairly dark color around these bright pink shapes, and they won't always look that pink because we'll put another glaze of color on top. And probably add a little bit of texture to them as well. So I want a little green in that, not quite as blue as that was. Let's come in here and kind of pay attention to the shapes, the tops of these trees. Kind of break that shape up a little bit. Here. Maybe bring a little more of that blue over into here. I still want it to be fairly green, but I also want it to have a little bit more blue in it. Add a little more water. Let's come back in with I'm going to add just a wee bit more royal blue to that blue-green mix, so it's a little more on the blue side, but not quite maybe as blue as some of this was. We'll come up here with this shape. And then there was this little kind of cliff face looking thing. Doesn't quite look like that probably, but that's all right. Kind of break it up. Do a couple pieces there. And just soften that. Let that run a little bit better into each other. All right, let's go back to, I think I'm going to use a little Prussian blue if you've got that up here on the top of this. It's not quite as dark as the indigo, but it's very similar. And I'm just going to add a little of that. Of course, on camera, it all probably looks fairly dark. But, I'm using a little Prussian blue now and kind of coming down where I had these shapes. And again, we'll break up these shapes even more with some grays, and then we'll mix up and some, some kind of blue, purple grays and things. This is just that initial color on the mountain, because these are, these mountains are under the shadow of those clouds, so and then as I move in here, I want to make sure that I don't get too many weird lines where it's dried and then not dry. And as I get closer to this, I want to move more into that darker blue green. So it's going to be even darker. Then I could even add a little violet to this to really make it dark. So it's dark right up next to this shape. So I want to push these mountains back behind these kind of foothills. So that's going to get really, really dark right in there. Pick up some more of that. And these may go a little darker eventually as well. We'll have to see what we think when we, after we get some of this, the rest of this kind of going. Now, if I had wanted to, I could have left the image fairly dark and not, and just done these as big silhouettes. That would have been another way to take this painting. But I thought it'd be kind of fun to try a little bit of this textural stuff going on. I think there's a break that comes up into there somehow, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. Kind of try some of this cliff face stuff. And push our comfort level a little bit. I don't know what, that doesn't really show up on camera that it's much lighter right here. Looks like I'm just painting over dark with more dark, but it was a little bit lighter than I wanted. And then actually there's a bit more of this that kind of comes down into there. Like so. Something like that. Let's come back in with a little indigo, Hooker's green, so I need some more water, and violet mix. Very little violet though, it's just there to kind of push it darker. I want that fairly dark back up in here around these foothills, as I've been doing. Up there, I probably could have gone a little more green, but that's okay. And it kind of dips down there. All right, so let's see here. I'm going to go back to just the Hooker's green, or a little more Hooker's green, a little less blue mix for here. So it's going to be a little bit more of that. Although this is behind this, you know, this part of the mountain is behind this peak here. Um, I'm going to kind of do this lighter green break here to, which by the way is not that light because there's a lot of blue in it. But it's still a little brighter green than that section. And I'm kind of, you know, the brush strokes, I'm kind of using the tip of my brush to make lines like that. But then I'm also doing kind of the side, you know, I'm doing kind of a side stroke as well. So I get a thicker stroke in some areas. Maybe not quite as thick as what I did on my finger there, but you know, here I'm using just the tip of the brush. And then where it starts to get a little thicker, you know, I push a little more pressure down and I get a little more of the whole side, you know, a bit more of the side. And then where it's really thick, I can make those thicker strokes where I have more space. So let's see, this is going to be a little green over here. But then as I get down close to this, I want to then switch back to that darker color right in here. And then we'll just kind of, I don't know if that's what's happening right there on the edge of the frame, but yeah, it's close enough. Put this down in here. So maybe this can be a little bit of that green instead of the darker blue over here. And then we'll come back in with that indigo Hooker's green violet mix to kind of finish out the bottom here. And I'm just, you know, I'm kind of making up that detail there. You know, it doesn't necessarily really look like that. You know, this is going to have some more bits that kind of, there's kind of this bit that looks like it's scooped out this way. And then this one kind of comes up, you know, and has some bits that come up that way. But I'm just kind of breaking up that shape a little bit because it's just a bit too big. And that's kind of multiple shapes there. So, and again, you know, these don't have to be exactly like what's in the photo, just as long as it's similar. Yeah. You know, this will eventually have some kind of shapes put in it because it's not this big shape that kind of looks vaguely like Africa. I mean, it's generally that shape, but it's broken up quite a bit more, as is this stuff. So once this green blue stuff dries, we'll we'll kind of deal with that stuff. I've got some weird, I don't really care for those light bits that I originally put in there. So I'm just going to kind of soften those a bit. This may be even a little bit too light. I want to just knock it back just a skosh more. Yeah. Let's see. That is a little weird right there. Got a weird little light green line. I'm not sure what that is. So I'm just going to paint over that. I don't know if you guys could see that or not, but let's see. So then I've got a fairly dark, this right here where I just painted that green, that's a fairly dark shape. So I'm going to actually come in with just some indigo, mostly. And then kind of just bring that in like so. This is mostly dried right there. And let that dry, because these are going to be a little hazier back here, so I don't want them quite as dark as the stuff in front of them. So there's that. I might add just a bit more of that indigo over here on this side to kind of help balance that out. You know, this area here is also going to get a little bit darker in some spots too, so I'm not particularly worried about that. Yeah. Let me let this dry. Let me dry this real quick, and then we'll do these other two little. There we go. So that's, and that looks a lot darker, I think, on screen than it is in person. I think it's a little hard to tell, but that's okay. So I'm going to do these, you know, mountains in the background. And what I want to do with them is take some of that indigo that I was using and kind of, I'll show you what I'm talking about here. I'm going to kind of mix in just a bit of the quinacridone violet, maybe. I may have too much indigo. Spread it out a little bit. There we go. And get this kind of nice gray purple there. That's better. And then I'm going to bring that in here and maybe just a hint of green. I'm going to bring that in here So it's kind of a gray, purple, you know, blue, purple kind of thing. And I'm just going to kind of bring that in like that and then add a little water to it. Really, I got the ceiling fan on and it dried really quick. Even though I had a fair amount of water in the brush, that was weird. So I had to kind of scrub the line that it formed. I don't know. The paper's kind of warm from using the hair dryer, so that might have been part of the issue. That's probably where part of that came from. So I've got that, and there's a glare on it, so it's a little hard to tell. And then there's this kind of mountainy shape back in there. Clean that shape up a little bit. And it doesn't have to be too exact. We just know that there's a few peaks in this area. And let me dry that real quick to get rid of that glare. So you can see that there, you know, I mean, it's not fully dry here yet, but you can see that's a fair amount lighter, but it feels further back because it has that little bit of atmospheric perspective. So there's atmosphere between where we're standing looking in that direction. And so that seems much further away because it's kind of going to be a bit hazy and not as sharp. And I don't even know if that's really the right shape, but that's all right. It doesn't really matter. It's just kind of the idea that there's multiple peaks back there. Yeah. So I'm fairly happy with that. That kind of gives that impression. I'm gonna kind of fix that shape a little bit. It's weird. More of a little more of a peak than I did. I think. I'm just going to kind of change that just a wee bit. Yep. Almost kind of a small double peak kind of a deal going on there. I like that shape a little bit better. So just make sure that I lift some of that back up so it's not quite as dark. Yeah. I like that shape a little bit better. I didn't like the shape that I had. But I do like this kind of gray purple that I've created here that I think will work perfect for sort of knocking this back down and using some of this to kind of create some shapes within these kind of cliff faces here. So I'm just going to kind of pull a little, that's maybe a little too much. I kind of want to ease my way into it. So I'm going to just kind of put a little bit of a glaze over the whole thing just to knock that back just a skosh. And that seems too dark, so I'll just add a little water. And even if I pick up a little of this green, surrounding green, that's okay. But you see how that knocks that back quite a bit. So it's not quite as in your face bright pink as it was, but we still have that kind of color in there. Let me kind of blot some of that. So it's, but it's knocked it back a fair amount. Let me dry that real quick. And what I can now do is come in and kind of think about, okay, well, there's sort of some vertical shapes in this. So I want to just add a little bit of verticalness to some of this. with a little bit of the darker, using that same gray, you know, that purpley gray that I created. There's a bit of an angle to this one. So we'll add just a bit of shadow where maybe there's some, you know, cracks in the rocks and things like that. We're just kind of, maybe there's some coming down. Kind of break this shape up. I don't really care for that bit. Maybe this kind of comes in at a, and really I'm not even really looking at the source photo. By this point, I'm kind of just thinking, okay, well, what shapes would make this look a little more like a cliff face? So, you know, how can I break this one big shape up to look at, or to look more like what I want it to look like? So I'm just going to kind of break that up a little bit, maybe break that up a little bit. I don't know how well you can see that, so let me kind of zoom in on what I'm doing here. And maybe this kind of, that may be a little bit too big, so I'm going to try to just, I'm really care for that shape. But what I can do is kind of sculpt that a little bit better. And bring some of this in, this kind of shadow here. And that's really all it is just painting little bits of shadow. And I'm really, I'll show you here on the, I'm kind of, you know, I'm going to exaggerate it, but I'm pushing my brush down to get that kind of little bit of, I'm not pushing it down as much as I was just showing you, but that's kind of the way I was pushing the brush down to get that. And I'm kind of dry brushing this right now. There's not a lot of water in my brush. So I'm just using it fairly dry to kind of add texture to that shape. So let me see. If I zoom way in, you know, it just looks like kind of a scribbly thing going on there. But that's really all I'm doing. It's kind of scrubbing a little bit, you know, dry brushing. And if I need to pick up more, I can re-wet my brush. So I'll re-wet it so it's fairly wet now. But then I can kind of wipe it on my towel. I can go grab a little more paint, which is fairly dry in my palette. And I can start another one of these things. And actually, you know, one of the, oh, Jeannie's trying to get in. One of these, and really before I even do that, you know, I came in and I kind of knocked that back. I could use a fairly light wash of this purpley gray, just to kind of lightly brush over this before I start. Before I start doing some of these textural things, so I can kind of come in here and put an ad, you know, a bit more of you know, just darken that a little bit. Cool thing is I can still see that little hint of orange poking through. Let me zoom in. You know, I can still see a little bit of that orange poking through here. I can definitely see that opera poking through. So even though I've taken a light wash and put over it, it's still got that nice color coming through. Let's see, I'm going to kind of do a little bit of that over this. A little bit lighter, more water. Pick up a little bit more. And all I'm doing is kind of knocking it back just a skosh. Because again, we're not going to want it as bright as this area is going to be here. So I have to knock it back. In fact, I may need to knock it back just a bit more. you know, like that. And then give that, while that's drying, I can kind of come up here and kind of fiddle around with this. And again, I'll just kind of get I got something sticking in my elbow. I'll just kind of, you know, I've got a little bit of, whoa, there we go. I got a little bit of water in my brush. I can come over here, pick up a little bit of paint, blot it a little, you know, just a touch. If I feel like there's maybe a little bit too much, and I can come in and kind of dry brush. And this feels like maybe there's a bit of this kind of, let me zoom in on that. A little hard to see. Feels like maybe there's a little bit of kind of a vertical shape to that. And I think it needs to be just a bit darker. So let me pick up just a bit more paint. And I can sharpen some of those lines up. Break up some of that. But again, I'm not too worried about, you know, hyper detail on this. I just want it to kind of vaguely look like these mountains over near Taos. As long as it kind of looks that way, then people will be happy with it. I don't like this shape that I've got here. I think I'm going to kind of change that up a little bit. Just make that a little thinner. And that feels a little better to me. A little more like, if it kind of, I'm just going to grab a little more of that color. Because I noticed a little bit of a weird shape there that I didn't care for. I wanted it slightly more round, which I don't know if I accomplished that or not, but that's okay. Just let that kind of do its thing. Let me dry that real quick. That may be a little more pointed than I want. I think I managed to make it more pointed than round. So actually, if I come in, and this is, you know, I probably should have just left it alone. So let this be a little bit of a lesson. I'm going to come in and kind of round that a little more. And then round that just a little bit. Okay. I don't know if that's any better or not, but it's okay. I don't mind exaggerating shapes a little bit, so. That's good enough. So let's see. This shape, like here, feels like it's more kind of at an angle. So where this one kind of felt like it was more, you know, kind of vertical along this, even though that's diagonal, these felt like it needed to have a little bit more of a vertical feel to it. This feels like it needs a little more angled. Excuse me, angled to some of this. Now I have the hiccups. What the heck? Got to cut back on the sauce. I just want to kind of change the shape up a little bit. I feel like maybe this one needs to be a little bit darker anyway. I'm just going to kind of pull that over. And it'll be there, but not as dark or not as bright. And I kind of feel like this is also going to have a bit of some of those angles to it, but also needs to be a little bit darker. So what I'm going to do is not worry about some of those lines and then knock this back, just pick up a little more of that gray purple and knock that back just a bit more. And then I can come back. I think I'm gonna do the same with this one here too. Feels like it needs to be just a bit more on that dark side. Okay, I gotta set this in the cradle for a second. My arm's getting tired. So yeah, let's let that dry. And maybe I want to come in with just a bit more, like maybe there's kind of a bit more of a shadow on this section here. Just to break that up just a little bit more. So that's going to be a little bit darker. And I'm not overly concerned with whether or not this is the same exact shape as the photo, but I just want to kind of break that little bit up there. And then maybe there's a little bit of darker stuff kind of coming down along this edge somewhat. I think I got the angle off a little bit. That was looking a little weird. Maybe just a little. Yeah, I always kind of picture these sections as maybe there was I don't know if there was like a mudslide that all the dirt and trees and stuff kind of flowed off of this section at some point, or and got down to the rock. Or if a big chunk of the mountain fell off, who knows? I mean, it could be any kind of. Not being a geologist and having only taken one geology class in college, I did pass with an A. I got an A+ in that class, but it was 30 years ago, so my geology knowledge is pretty sparse now.
I'm still very impressed.
Let's see, this feels like maybe it kind of comes back up and meets this kind of, this feels like maybe there's a little bit of a bowl to that, maybe. Kind of how I'm envisioning this area here. Let's add a little bit more dark in some of those spots. Yeah. And again, we can come back in and add more dark to this. It's just a lot harder to get back to the light. So I'm kind of easing in. These areas here, I wasn't too worried about because they are fairly dark. I didn't really feel like we needed to work our way into them. But this area here, and we can even soften, I might come in here and soften a little bit of that edge a little bit more, just to kind of pull some of that down into here, so it's got a bit more of a lost edge that kind of disappears versus this, kind of sharp edge that we've got here. I feel like maybe there's a bit of a lost edge should be right in there. I just want to break up that shape a little bit. And I'm kind of feeling like as we go in here, this shape should be broken up. It feels a little bit big as well. So I just want to pull that in kind of there. And again, that feels like it should be kind of a bowl shape as well. Let me grab a little more of that green. So that's I put in that gray and then I dropped in a little Hooker's green on top of it. Well, and it was really a little Hooker's green blue, royal blue mix. But that kind of breaks up that shape and then adds a little bit of, cracks and crevices initially to that. We're going to darken this, but I wanted to get that shape broken up just a bit more than it was. Okay, let me just kind of hide that line that I got there. Whoops, a little bit. Just add a little bit more paint. That's close enough. And then I want to knock these back a little bit from what I've got them as well. So I'm going to come in with a little of that. And this is fairly watered down. I want a lot of water in this. I want it to be a very thin wash. Just a real thin wash of, and even if I'm picking up some of that Hooker's Green mix as well, it's going to bleed into that a little bit, and that's okay. I don't mind that. I can still see those kind of brighter hints of color through there. Let's see, let's just stick that back a little bit. That kind of looks like Italy right there. So yeah, so just knocking that back, it's still got that color coming through. This started to look kind of turquoisey there, but there is no turquoise on that, so that's kind of interesting. Whoops, just lost my brush. There we go. Yeah, I do feel, well, I think I'm gonna leave this. This feels a little bright, but it may play into that being kind of part of my area of interest right in here. So I'm gonna leave that alone for now. I don't want to get that too dark yet. And then this has got that kind of bowl shape, so I want to kind of come in and dry brush a few of these kind of. Let me show you what I'm doing here. Dry brush a few of these kind of crack shape things in there, and really all I really am just there's hardly any water in my brush, and I'm just kind of dry brushing. You can see there's barely anything coming off of my brush, but there's enough that it kind of gives that hint of maybe I break this shape up a little bit by adding a little bit of shadow right in there. And again, that's just dry brush, not a lot of water in my brush. Very dry, very little water. If I need to pick up a little bit more, I can. But then I just vary the pressure. So I'm barely touching the paper with my brush now. This feels like maybe it's more vertical. I don't know. This has kind of got a bowl. Maybe this has got a more sheer cliff face. And again, I mean, if I zoom very far in there, all that is just little tick lines that I've kind of painted on there with the brush. You know, it's not real detailed. But as you come back out, it starts to kind of feel like whatever that, you know, mountain's made out of that rock. Yeah. So, and it just adds that texture, but without a lot of I mean, we don't want a lot of detail in this. We want it to look, you know, we want that look, but we don't necessarily want, you know, I don't want to go in there and draw I want the viewer to make up part of the story. I am going to come in here and kind of soften some of these edges as well, you know, kind of like I did that there. Just so I get a little bit more lost edge to this, so it's a softer edge. Maybe I want a little bit softer bit down in here. And maybe I want to kind of break up. This is a weird shape right there, so I kind of want to break that up a little bit. Maybe it's less of a big shape there. Just kind of break that up just a bit. And then come in and really soften that part there. Yeah. And then I've got a weird little thing going on here, so I think I'm just gonna kind of pull this dark blue, this indigo that I've got there, in front of that lighter green. Like maybe there's a little bit of light that's passing behind this peak and hitting that peak right there. If I darken this, oops, I kind of screwed that up, but that's all right. If I pull this down here, there was kind of a weird little thing there. So I'll just, I kind of made that up. It doesn't really do that in real life, but I kind of liked how that was feeling. So just pull, and that pushes this hill forward and pushes that one back a little bit because there's going to be light passing through there. And later when this is dry, I can go in and lift just a bit of this out and maybe even add just a hint of yellow or something, or that permanent yellow deep, just to give it that little bit of glow. I can add that a little bit of that over here as well. Oh shoot! It's 8:53 now. Did I get a fair amount ahead of you guys still, or are you guys pretty caught up?
You just are much better on detail than I have in my painting.
Well, that's okay. I mean, again, it's just practice. And the cool thing is, I mean, you guys can watch this over and over and over again and try this same thing multiple times to practice. But really all this is just practice with dry brushing, practice with you know, different types of washes and stuff like that. So it's just years of practice.
I believe it.
So since it's almost 9, do you guys? I'll go ahead and kind of stop here for the day, and we can pick this back up next week. But I think it's coming along pretty good. I don't know if you guys want me to look at yours today or, oops. Or-
Yeah, I wouldn't mind, just so I know where I should change things.
Okay.
before we go on.
Yeah. Why don't we do that?
So,
And if you don't, if you don't want to, that's okay too. So don't feel pressured to. Okay, let's see. Where did you go? Yeah, well, yeah, Kathy, if you want me to.
all right, and then you can tell me where I'm headed.
Okay.
Let me get this. All right. Video. Whoops. Okay, here I am.
There we go. So let me get you in the spotlight. Oh, okay. So this is looking pretty good. I think really all it needs is a little more. It's going to need a little more contrast. There, I got a shot of it. So,
Okay, can I take it down?
yeah.
Okay.
I know you're getting tired holding it there. Let's see. Let's get that out of there. Let's see. No, that was open. Let's see. Screenshots. Here we go. So, yeah, I think I like your little tree that you've got there. So let me go to share screen. So I think so. This looks really nice, Kathy. I think that you want a little. See how dark this is?
Uh-huh.
Let me get a different point. I think you want that to come all the way kind of down into here.
Okay.
And even it might not necessarily be that color, but you want that level of dark on through here, except for kind of here and maybe up top here. But like all of this, let me just. Oh, that's a big brush. If you want that contrast here, almost all the way kind of down in here. I would mix up the color, so it's not this whatever that is. It might be green, it might be the blue, it might be whatever, but
Okay.
most of this area, like even through here, all this down in the bottom should be that dark.
Okay.
You can even use some of this color that you've got over here. I would sharpen. I'm not using that color right now, but I would sharpen that shape up. It's a little soft.
Okay.
Same with this. It's a little soft. But this could be. This doesn't necessarily need to be that dark. Well, I mean, a little bit, but once you get, like sharpen these up, because you want this to have good contrast against that. But then when you come over here, this is where you'd start, you'd start softening that down into this light that you've got going on right here. So,
Okay.
and you might save a little bit of this light. But essentially all of this, except for, where you've got the pink and stuff, needs to be quite a bit darker. And I think that'll help. And then once we kind of add this front shadow up in here, we haven't done that yet. So don't worry about it. That will help kind of balance out. Because right now it feels like there's a whole, you've got a whole slew of dark going through this middle. And this is all light. But we'll add a fairly dark shadow up here in the front where there's a cloud that's casting this shadow, and then there's just this little bit of light, this kind of whole you know, section of light that comes through this middle part.
Uh-huh,
You know, is really what that is. So,
uh-huh.
so
Well, shall I lighten up that dark? Because I just barely put that in, trying to
which
make the contrast. Shall I lighten that up a little bit?
where?
On the mountain.
Oh, up in here,
Well, right. Oh, I'm pointing right there. Yeah, right there.
right here.
Uh-huh.
No, I would kind of leave that dark. You know, you could lift a little bit out and add a little bit green or something, but I would want you want a fair amount of good, decent contrast against
Okay.
this hill, because you want this hill to be in front of those mountains. You could lift a little bit out right here because you kind of want this to be in front of that, and give it that impression that there's a little bit of light. You know, that's why while this needs to be darker, you can come in and you know, it's really hard to do this with Photoshop, but you know, if this is all dark, like so, you can then come back in and lift, you know, a little bit out. I'm doing this with the eraser, but you get kind of so there's a little bit of light on there. So darken it, let it dry, then go back in and lift a little bit out. So then it looks like you've got that light. What am I looking for? There we go. That I'm just going to draw on this, but you've got that light that's kind of coming in like this, or actually not even like that. It's coming in really low like this, but low, you know, coming in along like that, and then hitting back here between this mountain and, you know, it's hitting there. So you could lift a little bit of this dark that you've got there, but not a lot. And then this, you know, can be a little darker. Does that make any sense at all?
Yeah.
So what I would worry, I wouldn't worry about lightening anything right now. What I would do is darken most of, you know, I'm just gonna basically everything, you know, you've got your kind of cliffy bits here. So leave those lights, but now everything that I've kind of outlined, all this, except for, you know, like I said, you can lift out little bits here, you know, because there's a bit of a face there. You can leave this exactly like it is and just kind of softly, you know, build this dark up. Kind of see how I have that kind of smut, you know. I kind of smudge that in. You know, leave that nice light there. There's some light that's being caught. That'll bring, you know, people into your painting. That's where you get a little bit of this over here as well. You know, you'd lift out a little bit of that, maybe to get to this kind of light green like that. But the rest of this can be fairly dark with just you know, lift out a few little spots of light, like, you know, and then the rest, yeah, the rest of all this can be fairly dark with just, you know, it's really hard in Photoshop to do that, but
Yeah.
but hopefully, you know, you want this whole mountain range is fairly dark. It's mostly in shadow, and there's just a wee bit of light catching, you know, like just some spots. Like I didn't draw a very good shape there. Really quick, I'll show you what I'm talking about on mine though. If you could see right here, you know, it's fairly dark, but I've kind of gone in and lifted some of that green back out to give it a little bit of texture. But see how dark that is? Oh, Photoshop just quit. That was weird. You know, see how dark that is? I get that nice contrast with that.
Okay.
So that's really what that was weird. Photoshop quit. Give me a second to get that to open back up. But yeah, so that's what I would do on yours. Other than that, I mean, really honestly, I think you're coming along nicely. Let's see. Well, it opened that one.
Okay,
Yeah. So that's what I would do.
let me get a picture of yours.
Oh, okay. I'll try and straighten it in the screen a little bit.
And, okay, I got it.
All right. Anybody else want me to look at theirs or
Sure, I'll give you a try.
okay, let me there we go. Pull it back just a bit from the yeah, right about there. Let me get the all right. Hold it right there and got it. All right. You can set it down now. There we go.
Somehow or other, I did not make two mountains. I have one mountain with a crack in the middle.
Oh yeah. I think can you hold, you know what? When I took that picture, it turned out pretty blurry. I think I took it right as you might have moved. Can you hold it back up? Because it's pretty blurry and let's see here. What am I trying to do? Yeah, can you turn your camera back on and hold it back up? Where'd you go? Did I lose?
Back on.
Oh, there we go. There you are. And it could be just let me try it one more time. It could also be being night and trying to focus in on something. Webcams aren't great anyway. That could be okay. I think I got it. Let me try that one. Hopefully that's a little more in focus. Yeah, it's slightly better. I think it's more just being night and trying to use a webcam and but actually this is quite a bit better if I show you the other one. Let's see where to go. Yeah. Now, no, yeah, definitely much better. So yeah, you do have kind of one mountain, but that's okay. That could be, and what I would do is I would kind of play that up, or you could do a couple of things. So let me give you a new layer here. And let me make this bigger. So you could do a couple of things. Let's go in. You could
From there, it looks like it has a big kidney.
where did my eyedropper go? Where the heck did my make sure I'm in the right workspace. Okay. I can't remember. It's probably there it is. When Photoshop quits, it does weird things. So so here's one thought. You could bring this up a little higher, kind of more in line with that shape that mountain is. So just bring it up just a wee bit like so. And that may even be too high. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
So you could do that. And then this would actually all just be dark in here. So that's one idea. And then what you could do is come in and let me sample a color here. Then you could come in and lift a little bit out. So this is a little bit lighter. That's way too light what I'm painting on there, but it kind of gives you the idea. Let me see.
Yeah.
Kind of smudge that back to. So then if this is all dark, and you have just a hint of lifted light back in there, then that'll start to look like two different hills. And then what I might do is I would also, boy, that was a loud car that went by. I would also darken a lot. Oops, wrong color. And I'm just using this blue, but you know, it would be, and actually that might work because you have a nice green on here. I would darken this as well down in here. You know, it doesn't have to be, you have these nice little cliff shaped things going on there. So don't necessarily do the whole thing. Let me, you know, kind of blend it into the light bit that you have, which I'm doing a terrible job of with the smudge tool in Photoshop, but kind of hopefully that gives you an idea of, you know, just a soft, start off fairly dark and kind of work your way back up into that light with a little water and just kind of soften it.
Yeah.
And then I would do the same. So like, where are we? Over in here, like this whole, most of this bottom part should be fairly dark. I love what you got going there, so don't paint over that. But kind of pull this bottom area in a little darker. Excuse me.
Well, bless you.
Oh, thank you. Just to kind of give that contrast between this foreground or middle ground and that mountain back there. Other than that, I mean, really, this is looking pretty nice. So that's what, you know, if you wanted to make it look like two mountains, all you really need to do is just kind of pull this peak up a little bit and then, you know, darken this and lift a little bit out there. And that'll start to look like two, you know, distinct shapes. If you didn't want to do that, you know, if you wanted to go ahead and do the double, you know, just a single mountain, you could do that as well. And just, although I would change the shape just a bit, I might, where am I might change this shape just a skosh, and kind of make that feel a little bit more. I kind of like the idea of just bringing this up and mimicking, you know, that shape a little bit more. Because really that's all it's missing.
I do
what
too.
you did was you just kind of came down at an angle, but it pops up a little bit higher than this hill. So I think just bringing that up and mimicking the mountain shape. I don't know if I've done that. First one I did was a little better. There we go. You know, just come up and put a little peak on it and accent, you know, I don't know if it needs to be that high, but maybe.
I think I just forgot that part of the hill.
Yeah. And I think that'll solve your problem. It'll make it look like two different mountains. But
All
yeah,
right.
I think that's looking
Thank
great.
you.
You're welcome. Good job. Anybody else?
Okay, Michael, one quick look here.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. Hold it. Yeah, hold it up just a wee bit, and then let me grab this this screenshot thingy, and got it. All right.
I erased all my bushes, so that's drying down at the bottom.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, I see. You kind of. That's oh, let me. Dang it. A little larger. What am I trying to do? Share screen. I've forgotten where things are from 1 minute to the next. I think you've got good contrast in this. You know, I think this is looking really nice. I think once we kind of work back in some You know, right now it feels really heavy up here.
Yeah,
But once we add in, you know, next week we're going to add in a pretty sizable shadow down in here. I didn't do a very good job of drawing that, but you know, like all of this will be fairly dark. And then if you come back in, if you weren't happy with the little trees and stuff,
yeah,
if you come back in with some of those,
Yeah.
you know, I'm, again, doing a terrible job of painting with Photoshop, but
well,
Yeah.
they looked like, you can see over on the side, where I left some of, they looked like some kind of, Chinese writing.
oh,
Another day they'll look different.
yeah. I kind of like how this almost feels like you've got a little valley that pushes back in here. So it's a little bit different. And I kind of like that. I might play up that and soften. Oh, I didn't create a new layer, so I can't undo the things I did. Sorry about that. But I might soften some of these lines
Okay,
just so it feels, you know, kind of blend. Sometimes those little demo things are cool, and other times they're just in the way. You know, just kind of soften that.
by soften, take some of the color out.
Well, no, what I really mean is come in and with a little water. Well, yes and no. If you come in with a little, let me undo what I did here. If you come in with a little water along this line here, really what we're trying to do is just make that line more fuzzy.
Okay,
Just right in here. So if you just
Okay.
soften that, and sometimes you might have to add a little more dark paint or whatever,
right,
but just soften it so it's more of a fuzzy line. I think
yeah,
it's kind of an interesting, you know, the way yours is going. It almost feels like there's a valley in here that you can kind of follow into, and that's kind of neat.
yeah,
So yeah, I think this is
Okay.
looking nice. But you've got good contrast. I think eventually we'll probably knock these down just a little bit more,
yeah,
with, you know, just a little bit of gray. You know, actually take a little bit of this color that you've got right here,
okay,
really water it down,
okay,
and do a really thin wash over this. Just mostly water, very little paint. I
okay,
think that'll knock it back just a wee bit more.
okay, I'll do that.
So yeah, good
Alrighty.
job.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Anybody else? I'm going to take everybody's silence as no.
Yeah,
As
I'd like to
we're
show you
all
mine.
tired. What's that?
I'd like to show you mine.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Let's see. Can you see it? Guess not.
I don't think you have your camera on.
Hang on.
There we go. Let's there we go. Yeah, just kind of hold it up a little higher and back kind of where you had it, like back away from the camera a bit, so kind of towards, yeah. And then now back up higher, sorry. Right there. Yeah, that's close. Maybe just a skosh higher. Perfect. There we go. Got it. All right. Let's it was a little crooked, but that's okay. Why did you do that? Come on. There we go. Come on. Oh, this is looking really nice, Tommy. Let me what am I trying to do? Straight. And okay, that's a little better. Okay, share screen. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, I think this is looking really nice. I might, this is a little sharp of an angle right there. Because you've got this little point and then it goes shoop. What I might do is bring that, I might bring that. No, I might bring this angle up just a little bit more to there. Just to soften, just to make that a little less sharp. But other than that, I mean, you got great contrast going on here. I think this is looking really nice. I might, well, I don't know. I might, I don't know. I like what's going on here. I'm okay. I think what I might do is actually this is going to be the opposite of what I told her. I might lift just a bit of this purple here. I think that's what's by. So you've got this green kind of on this side of this, and then it stops and goes to purple. What I might do is lift a little, lighten this purple just a little bit right here, lift a little bit of it, and then take that paint that you've lifted up and actually put a little bit of it over here on top of this green. And then you could pull a little, whatever this green is that you've got, and drop a little bit over here. And that'll kind of help it look like the color is, like it doesn't stop where this kind of cliff face thing is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
You don't want like a line and then a color, a completely different color on either side of that line.
Right.
Because then it looks, people go, well, what is that? Why is that doing that? So I would just lift a little bit. I wouldn't even use your palette for lifting. I would just get your brush wet, lift this up a little bit, lighten that, take that same wet brush and come over here and drop a little of that purple paint that you picked up, just a little bit over here. And then, wait for this to dry and maybe just add a touch of this blue green that you've got there, just a little bit into there. And I think you'll be in good shape. Just so it feels like you've got a little bit of continuity between the two parts of that even if it's technically, this bit is different from this bit, it feels weird not having a little bit of this color go that way or a little bit of this color go that way or both.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
other than that, man, I honestly, I think, two tiny little things, and I think you're doing great.
Well, I thought you were going to point out the mountains because they look kind of funky to me.
I mean, I think you might knock this light stuff, this cliff, kind of the rocky face bit. You could knock that back a little bit because it's still a little bit bright compared to how dark this is. You want it to be a little bit lighter, but not, you don't want it to be that much lighter. Mine are still a little bit light, I think. So I might even end up going over mine a little bit more too, with a wash kind of at the end. But I think if you just hit that with a little more, the fact that it doesn't quite look like maybe the actual mountain or whatever. I mean, if you came in, let me just change this for a second. If you came in with where did it go? There it is. I'm just going to use this purple, but and I don't, what do I have that at 30%? So if you came in and just knocked that back a little bit, see how that just alone kind of helps that?
Yeah.
Just by putting a little bit more of a dark wash over it. Not a whole lot. I mean, this is at 36%. I don't know what that translates into into watercolor, but you know, just get a nice little wash of this purple, really mostly water, and knock it back a bit. Let it dry and see if it still looks a little weird. If you feel like it's still a little too bright, then do another one on top of that one. And then let it dry, but just do it in small increments. Like I went pretty quick on that. I might have gone in smaller increments than I did, just to, you know, make sure that I liked what I was doing. I mean, you can always, while it's still wet, you can blot it back up and say, oh, that was too much. But
Okay.
but yeah, that's all I would do is just knock it back just a little bit more. Cause I think that's all it really is that it's just so much different. And while you want a little bit of that difference, you don't want it so glaringly different that it looks weird.
Okay.
So yeah, good job though. All right, well, I guess with that, I will say goodnight and have a great week and a good weekend. And I'll see you guys next Monday. And next Monday, I will be 51. My birthday is actually on Thursday, but so
Happy birthday.
thank you.
Happy
Birthday.
Thanks. So
You child.
yeah, I'll be a little bit older next week.
Have a good week.
Thanks, you too.
Bye-bye.
All righty, bye.